On the third floor of this anonymous building in central London is one of Britain's most important watchdogs, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. But it's at the centre of a maelstrom over claims of bullying, discrimination and concerns over its independence that have led to a flood of resignations.
It was heartbreaking. I couldn't be complicit in the erosion of what the organisation is supposed to be.
I was on calls where staff were crying. I know of various instances where staff were upset, worried and troubled about what was going on.
Everyone was just so sad, and it only took a few months before I was like, forget this, I am out.
The Equality and Human Rights Commission is one of the most important independent bodies in the country. Independent of government, but answerable to Parliament. Its job is to help make Britain fairer by safeguarding and enforcing the laws that protect people's rights to fairness, dignity and respect. It investigated the Labour Party over anti-Semitism and discrimination at the Met Police. Now we can reveal the chair of the Commission is herself under investigation.
It's about being open-minded.
Having respect for human dignity.
The Commission proudly proclaims itself as a defender of human rights. Its standard bearer is Baroness Kishwer Falkner. She was appointed chair in 2020 by Liz Truss, who expressed concerns the Commission had become dominated by a small number of unrepresentative voices and dangerous groupthink.
And we're going to make sure that that level playing field is properly enforced. That's why I'm appointing a new chair and a wide variety of commissioners to the Equality and Human Rights Commission to drive this agenda forward.
But now Lady Faulkner is under fire. Her leadership is the subject of an investigation led by an independent barrister. The terms of it are secret, but we've learned it will examine allegations of discriminatory behaviour by her. And the controversy at the Commission goes even wider than that investigation. We've spoken to more than 20 current and former members of staff. Lady Faulkner's supporters say she's made the Commission sharper and leaner. But other staff, as well as public and confidential documents we've reviewed, paint a disturbing picture of the culture at the Commission. One confidential document written by some senior staff in February says, "We are deeply concerned about an increase in bullying, harassment and discrimination, which is not in line with who we are as an organisation. There is a lack of psychological safety, i.e. the fear of who will be attacked next." And it says, the board, including the chairwoman, are not functioning in line with good governance. About Lady Faulkner specifically, it says, unacceptable behaviour from the chairwoman is becoming normalised. Staff are not treated with courtesy and respect/bullying. And notably, discriminatory comments/discussions have been openly had with officers present, e.g. November board meeting on the Equality Act. The meeting in question took place the day after a trans woman, Emma Laslett, was a contestant in the final of the BBC's Brain of Britain radio show.
Our next finalist, please.
Laslett had appeared on TV in 2020, and her inclusion in a radio programme described as an all-woman final made headlines.
And your name is?
Emma Laslett.
Before an official board meeting of the Commission the next day, attended by 22 commissioners, officials and a representative from the Government Equalities Hub, Lady Faulkner is alleged to have singled Laslett out, describing her in disparaging terms as a bloke in lipstick. We understand the Commission's chief executive rebuked the chair. We put those comments to Emma Laslett herself.
I mean, if that's true, it's, I mean, on the one hand, not the worst comment I've received, but on the other, it's disgusting and just disheartening. If your job is to protect people from discrimination, and while on duty and in front of everybody else who's doing that, you are peddling that kind of discrimination, then you're not fit for the job and honestly shouldn't be doing it anymore.
The Commission told us they treat allegations of bullying and harassment with the utmost seriousness, and it would be wrong to comment when an investigation is ongoing. Staff welfare is of paramount importance to us. Some staff we spoke to raised other concerns. Many expressed fear the Commission's impartiality and independence from government is under threat. And they claimed the chair and board were assisting the government in undermining trans rights by proposing amendments to the Equality Act. One staffer told us what they believe.
The crux of the issue is we've been severely politically compromised at the very top of the organisation. We are effectively puppets on strings.
With heightened public debate around single-sex spaces, trans women in sport and trans prisoners, in January the Women and Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch signalled her support for changing the Equality Act to make birth sex the legal definition of sex. Some women's groups argue a change would help protect safe spaces for women.
This government has put in place at the head of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission.
Trans rights groups were outraged. They argue around 7,000 trans people already granted gender recognition certificates could be stripped of legal rights that have been law for over a decade. In February, Kemi Badenoch wrote to the Commission seeking their view. We've learned that the Commission's leadership and executive team had already considered this and commissioned legal advice. It recommended that contentious issues on single-sex spaces could be addressed without changing the law as Badenoch proposed. Advisory committees in Scotland and Wales agreed. But the board and its chair, Baroness Falkner, pressed on. In April, she wrote to Badenoch saying changing the law would bring greater legal clarity.
It feels like a sort of mask-off moment. There's no hiding from the fact that this is not an impartial or objective approach to the issue of trans rights. This is very clearly an attempt to undermine their rights. It's the exact opposite of what the national human rights body should be doing.
The Commission told us our decisions are and have always been made independently of any government. No advice is disregarded. Lady Falkner's approach has caused consternation. In the last 2 months, at least 7 senior figures have quit the organisation or handed in their notice, including one commissioner.
I think the AHRC was being used by government ministers to help them achieve their political interests around some of these culture war issues. And I think that's incredibly dangerous, because the AHRC is supposed to be the independent watchdog on equality and human rights. And the sad, heartbreaking thing about that is that the most vulnerable people, such as trans people, end up being on the front line of that game. And their lives are made worse. And they end up being worried and scared about what's going on.
Events over the last few years have left many Commission staff feeling demoralised. Internal numbers shared with Channel 4 News suggest 1 in 4 staff left the Commission last year. As for staff who identify as LGBT+, 2 in 5 left last year. The staff complaint states baldly, "We are particularly concerned about the high rates of attrition from the LGBT+ group and are worried that the Commission is becoming an unsafe place to work for this community."
I've never seen anything like it. Skilled professionals with years and decades of experience in human rights are just leaving for temporary jobs, or in some cases literally no job, because we just can't stomach it.
The Commission told us the departure of staff at all levels is driven by a number of factors. The Commission told us tonight that the issues it finds itself handling can be very complex, and there are a range of views, as there are in society at large. Nevertheless, it's promised to continue to protect the rights of everyone in Britain.
Well, shortly before we came on air, we received a statement from Baroness Falkner saying, "I have worked my whole life to promote the principles of equality and human rights, which are close to my heart as a British Pakistani woman in public life. It was considered appropriate to investigate the allegations through an independent investigator. While that process continues, all I can do is explain that allegations were received in February in my capacity as chair of the Commission. They relate to both me and to the whole board. I, of course, take these allegations very seriously and with humility. I will be cooperating fully with the investigation and have every confidence in being exonerated. I am always prepared to take criticism, to reflect on my decisions and to hear from those I may have inadvertently upset by my actions or those of the board.